Joined by John Oates, the partner of Darla Hall and John Oates friends. Joins me by phone. Morning, John. Thanks for taking the call.
Morning.
Today is the day when you have to do all of the media interviews, so thank you for taking the time to speak to us here in Cork ahead of the July gig for Live at the Marquee. Although it's not your first trip to Ireland, sure it's not. You've done a couple in the past at least. The O2 in 2017 and the Olympia where you did a DVD and a double CD, I believe, right?
Yeah, that was actually our first trip to Ireland, believe it or not. I can't believe that it was only a few years ago, but yes, and it was an amazing show, and looking forward to July to coming to Cork.
Yeah. Do you know of the Marquee? It's an incredible venue. Do you know of the past acts?
Heard.
Yeah.
I've heard a little bit about it, and it sounds like a great night. Hopefully it'll be beautiful weather, and we'll have a wonderful night.
Fingers crossed that the weather will be good this summer like last summer. Do artists talk to each other about events and gigs? Like Dylan's played the Marquee, Neil Young, Rod Stewart, Roger Waters, Beach Boys, Paul Simon, Clapton. Do you talk and recommend gigs like that?
Well, I'm sure that if we were to run into each other and the subject came up, I'm sure we would. But it's not something that I don't call anyone or no one calls me and tells me about a specific gig. Yeah. I think we hear about it more from folks like you, from radio and from our booking agents and things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm delighted to talk to you because I'm of that generation that can pretty much go all the way back to Sarah Smile and Rich Girl. That was back end of the 60s, early 70s, wasn't it?
Well, it was mid-70s, actually.
About 73, was it?
Sarah Smile was 74,
74.
And Rich Girl was 75.
Yeah, and after that, yesterday I was playing some of the back catalogue stuff, and I played 13 hits back-to-back, 6 of them, which were number ones. That's astonishing, isn't it, in fairness?
Ah, well, it's amazing to hear. Sometimes I'm surprised myself. It's amazing that we were able to. When I look back on how many albums we made and how many singles were released and how we toured the world for all those years, it's pretty incredible. So,
yeah.
I dedicated my basically 20 years of my life to creating this song, the songbook, so to speak.
Yeah.
And,
Why do you say 20 years when it's a 52-year career? Last time I checked, 67 to 2019.
I meant the first 20 years.
Yeah.
I meant when we started in 72 until we kind of slowed down in 86. So or 89 really.
Yeah.
So that's what I was talking about initially. But since that time, we've only put out a few records and haven't put out too many singles since then.
Well, would you say that the biggest decade was the 80s then? Because Private Eyes was described as one of the best and finest albums of the 1980s. You'd go along with that, I think.
Wonderful. Well, I'm proud of all the records we've made. If critics or the public wants to choose one over another, that's up to them.
Yeah.
One thing I'm very proud of is the fact that we put the same amount of effort and the same amount of attention into all the tracks on every album. The ones that became singles, the big ones like Private Eyes and Maneater and things like that. They became singles because radio folks and people just gravitated toward one particular song over another. But Daryl and I, we really, we thought of ourselves as album artists who would make a complete album full of good songs.
Were you not looking at the album then wondering what the first single would be, what the strongest song would be off the album?
Well, not initially. When we started the recording, we would have a batch of songs. We would go into the studio, and as I said, we would take the same care and the same effort with every song. But as the album would kind of evolve, eventually certain songs rose to the top.
Yeah, I read somewhere last night that at one stage one album had 19 songs. Clearly not all of them could get on the album, but they all would have deserved a place on the album. That's like leaving a couple of children behind when you're going on holidays, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of. We always thought maybe, perhaps one day there'd be a chance to release them. And, we did a box set in 2000, I believe it was 2005. And the box set has some things that were never released. And also you have to recall that back in those days when you were putting out records on vinyl, there was a limitation to the time.
That's right.
To the amount of songs that you could literally physically put on a record.
Yeah.
So we were limited by that.
Where are you guys now with, say, for instance, Spotify versus old traditional album sales and the importance of concerts and touring? Does that dwell on your mind at all?
Well, I was asked the other day, of what my opinion about the record business, and I said, well, I really don't know about the record business. I said, I'm not in the record business, I'm in the touring business. Because honestly, that's what Daryl and I do at this point. We tour. The music that we've made, the legacy of music that we've made is being played constantly on, as you said, Spotify, regular radio, whatever it might be. So those songs just live on their own. We don't really have, we've released them into the universe and they're out there. But what we really do now is we tour around the world.
I mean, it's incredible for us guys that were radio jocks primarily in the 80s, because your material, there was so much of it for us to work with, whether it was I Can't Go For That or Man Eater, Out of Touch, She's Gone, Sarah, Kiss on My List. They were just so radio friendly. And even in the 70s, you had a bit of a battle going on doing what you were doing, because it was being dominated by disco, right? Well,
we were able to weather the storm in various times, and even the disco era in the late 70s. We never went and became. We never tried to conform our sound to what was happening, but we did take some elements of the disco era, and certain things about the groove and certain things about new wave music in the 70s that we incorporated into our own style, but we never really lost our own style.
Yeah, but your stuff now is still being sampled. Other people are recording it. Mm-hmm. You've musically influenced decades of artists, featuring an awful lot of movies and stuff like that. Is all of that? I mean, how does that dynamic work between the two of you? Does one do the lyrics and the other do the music, or do you have did you have sit down and write song days? How did it work?
We would always be gathering song ideas separately and individually. And then we would get together prior to making a record, maybe a month or so before. And we would sit down and write. We would sit in the room and toss our ideas back and forth. We had some great collaborations with Jana and Sarah Allen, who helped with some of the songs. It was a kind of a team effort. And then then we would see which songs seemed to work the best, and they were the ones that made it.
And 40 million records later, you must have got something right.
Well, I guess so.
Yeah, the best-selling musical duo in history. And I didn't know actually whether or not you wrote material for other people. And then while researching, I found that you guys wrote Paul Young's Every Time You Go Away. How come you didn't do it for yourselves?
We did. It's the last track on the Voices album.
Why didn't you release it? Why wasn't it a hit?
Well, because the way we recorded it, it was recorded in a very kind of traditional R&B. We actually were trying to record it in the style of Stax Volt, the old Memphis label that was putting out records, when we were kids.
Yeah.
And we went for a very traditional R&B style. If you listen to our version of it on the Voices album, you'll hear it. It sounds like an old R&B record. And to Paul Young's credit, he took that song and they really produced it more in a pop style. And that's why his version became a big pop single.
And without taking too much more of your time, is it a difficult path? A duo like you and Darl, for instance, who are 52 years together. I don't know whether you had a hiatus or took breaks or anything. Is it difficult, that path, to have one musical partner for so long? Does it lead to any kind of creative issues or anything like that? How do you always get along, I suppose, is the point I'm making?
I think we've gotten along incredibly well considering how long we've been together. I think it's actually amazing, to be honest with you. We've never had a real, blowout or a fight or anything like that. We've had our differences, and, to this day we still have, various differences. We have different ways of thinking about things. We're different people. But at the same time, we have a love of music that's very consistent. You
complement each other in more ways than one. Delighted to see the set list featuring so many of the big wham bam hits, which is great. And we're looking forward to hearing them all when you hit Ireland, Dublin, and down here in Cork at the Marquee. It's been a pleasure talking to you, John Oates. Thank you for taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in July.
Have a good day.